Hello everybody, it's Mike from Vox Political again, and today I want to talk about Labour's rubbish bid to get disabled people into jobs, which I think is the very definition of madness. I refer of course to the saying that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. The Department for Work and Pensions, whose Secretary of State is Liz Kendall, has announced a plan to use 1,000 work coaches to help the long-term unemployed into work, in particular people on sickness and disability benefits. These coaches are already employed by job centres, but will be redeployed to focus on tackling economic inactivity, providing personalised and, so say, intensive support to thousands of sick and disabled people. They will do this by helping these sick and disabled people to write their curriculum vitae and by advising them on how to do well at job interviews. Now, Politics Live held a debate on this subject that was quite in depth, so let's go over to that.
Work coaches to focus on long-term unemployed. You will have heard on yesterday's programme the story from the BBC's economics editor that Rachel Reeves looks set, the Chancellor, to cut billions of pounds from the welfare budget in order to balance the books. But today we have this announcement of using 1,000 work coaches to help the long-term unemployed into work. Now, coaches are already employed by job centres but will be redeployed to focus on tackling economic inactivity, according to the Department of Work and Pensions. Are you in favour of cutting billions from welfare, Alice?
Well, I'm in favour of supporting people get back into work, because my experience of being an MP is I do meet a lot of people who would like to work but don't have the support to do that. And quite frankly, we have a system that isn't working. Constituents I've met, they're actually entitled to support they're not getting, they're not aware of the support available to them. So there's a lot of obviously speculation around this at the moment. We don't know what the exact proposal will be.
Well, I don't think there's any speculation about billions being cut from the welfare budget.
There are obviously difficult decisions about it, but what we have actually set out is some of these measures to help people get into work. The long-term coaches that you talked about.
How much do you think can be saved by 1,000 work coaches?
In terms of what?
In terms of the billions that are going to be, we're expected to be cut from the welfare budget. Are work coaches going to be the answer to getting all those people back into work?
No, clearly they're not the answer to everything. It's a package of measures that we need. And a lot of people are not able to work because of long-term health reasons, which is exactly why we're investing in the NHS, so that people, we've already delivered the 2 million extra appointments that we promised. And that is helping people get, whether it's physical health or mental health support that they need to be able to work. And I do feel that people do want to work if they're able to, and we are helping to increase those opportunities. 1 million young people not in education and employment, that is a scandal, frankly, and we do need to sort out the system so that we address these longer-term promises. The work coaches are part of the problem. They're not, the silver bullet that's going to solve everything.
Right. I mean, Ash Sarkar, I think Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, to refer to her again, said it was a moral mission to get people back into work. These are all positive changes.
If you think that you're going to get £5 billion worth of savings out of work coaches...
Well, I think we've heard from Alice.
We clearly don't.
Come on, be for
They must be very good, these work coaches.
They must be, God, the magicians, all of them. Here's the thing about... You're only going to make savings of the kind that Rachel Reeves wants to make if you stop people from getting benefits. All right? That's the only way you can make these savings. It's not me saying it, the IFS are saying it. Paul Johnson is saying this. This isn't, crazy lefties like me. So I think what's on the table here is austerity with a red rosette. And what we know from 14 years of Tory austerity is that it creates very expensive problems. We have a less healthy population.
I don't think it's austerity when we've put 22 billion into the NHS.
I think it is austerity when you're taking money out of the benefit system. Right? It is.
I see it as supporting people get into work who want to.
There are lots of people who can't work because one of the reasons why is 14 years of austerity, and there are, the savings of the kind Rachel Reeves wants to make will not be achieved without cutting benefits. There is no way you can do it. So either Rachel Reeves is an idiot, and I don't think she is, where she genuinely thinks that if you have 1,000 work coaches, you can save £5 billion. I don't think she's an idiot. Or I think she's being not entirely honest about what these proposals are actually going to entail.
Well, let me go to...
And my experience of politicians tells me that liars are more common than idiots.
Right. What I'm saying, though, is we haven't actually... There isn't a proposal set out here. Obviously, we've had a white paper that set out lots of measures around this, like the youth guarantee, for example. So Surely you agree there
Where's
are
the
people
£5 billion going to come
people
from?
who are on
Where's the
benefits
£5
who
billion
do want to work,
savings gonna
and with a
work?
bit of extra support
Well,
could
answer
do
that.
that.
Do you agree? There are people who are on benefits who would like to work and need support to get back to work.
Sure, and I think that the way in which you do that is you can bring in all sorts of changes. So for some people, when they start looking for work, it means that the amount of money that they get in terms of benefits goes down. So you're disincentivized to look for work. That's one change that you could make. Another change you could make is to actually invest in the economy and invest in people, which stimulates spending and grows the economy. What we've got at the moment is a blank cheque for bombs and austerity for Brits at home. The 1.5 billion that Keir Starmer promised for Ukraine, that's the amount that you would have saved from the winter fuel allowance.
Well, what do you think, Kate? Do you think you
priorities.
can make significant savings, first of all, from the welfare budget, billions of pounds?
I think you can. I agree with Ash that some people really do need this money and some people are very genuinely sick and can't work and they should be supported. We also have a huge problem post-COVID. The number of people on some kind of out-of-work benefit nearly doubled. It's at nearly 6 million people now. People went home during furlough and millions have decided not to come back. That's not to say every single one of them. Indeed, I'm sure millions do need the support. But there is a really good reason to think that the current sickness bill, which was £65 billion last year, estimated to be £100 billion by the end of this Parliament, that not all of that money is fundamentally needed for people who are suffering from real sickness that cannot allow them to work, especially as technology is rapidly advancing, AI is coming in, and it's easier to work from home. We have to believe that those numbers are not quite right. Something's gone very bad post-COVID when it comes to incentives to work, and that something can be fixed. I also think if you take Ash's point of view that perhaps we just do want a state where we spend more on people and invest more in people, I'm not at all convinced you're going to see the economic returns for that. I think you have a lot of welfare systems in the UK that clearly are not providing the economic returns. But the last way you want to do that is through sickness benefit. You do not want to incentivize people to say that they have bigger problems than they do. You almost want to look at something more like a universal income. I'm very nervous about how that would work politically speaking, but it was Milton Friedman, it was a free market economist who actually came up with the idea of a negative income tax. If you want to give people money, give them cash, let them spend it freely. Do not incentivize them to go into the benefit system when they don't need it. The last thing I want to say is that we are talking about £5 billion here. To me, the horror of all of this is that the UK, when it's an emergency, when it's needed, when we're talking about defence spending to protect Ukraine and to protect the UK, can't find it. And that is the trouble of successive governments, Tory and Labour, I'm sorry to say, that did not take the public finances seriously. The fact that Rachel Reeves is desperately going to try to find a couple of £1 billion to boost defence spending shows what a dire financial state the UK is actually in.
Well, do you want to take some responsibility for that, James?
The bank card has been maxed out. We're in a perilous state, I agree, and we have to make these defence commitments. Can I just, though, say a word for work coaches? They really are important and do make a difference. And can I also say a word for the sick? I think Katie's got a point that too many people are on sickness benefit, but there are a lot of very sick people in this country, and we do need to do something to get the country back on its feet.
Right, but do you think there are incentives, or rather disincentives, I should say, for people to go out and work?
No, something has gone badly wrong with our benefit system. But one of the things that's gone wrong is we're not offering people the support either to get better from their fundamental underlying health or to improve their skills and get back into the workplace.
So I presume you weren't a fan of that part of the Conservative manifesto in the last election that said £12 billion a year could be taken out of the welfare system in terms of savings?
We've got 9.5 million people in the UK at the moment who should be working, who aren't working. And that is something we definitely need to address. And I am supportive of the idea of trying to get our welfare bill down.
Right,
sure.
but by £12 billion a year, I mean, the IFS, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, said that wasn't up to the challenge, the manifesto that was printed when it came to finding that amount of money from the welfare system.
I don't want to put a number on what is the precise amount, but it is of the order of many billions, for sure.
Right. Well, I mean, one person who did, of course, take an awful lot of money out of the welfare system was George Osborne, a previous Conservative Chancellor in the age of austerity. There were many Labour MPs who came in, like you, fighting against those years of austerity. And yet, are you going to be, as Ash said, the red rosette on a new kind of austerity with these cuts to welfare?
No, absolutely not in terms of austerity. I think we've been very clear there's no return to austerity with Labour, which is why we are investing in public services. That's why we had to make difficult choices in the budget to free that money up. So I think there is actually quite a lot of consensus across the panel on many areas. There are some people who will need benefits because they simply can't work, but there's just not enough flexibility in the system. You know, I know people who would like to try working, but they feel that if they do that, they're at risk of losing all the support if they're not actually able to do it. And I think there are some changes fundamentally, as well as looking at the money and how the system works, that will bring real changes.
I'm not going to speak for Ash, and she's already said it. I'm still not going to speak for you, but I suspect that this side of the panel does very much think austerity is about to take place, perhaps from very different angles. You're talking about spending cuts. That is certainly a form of austerity. Tax rises are a form of austerity, and we always conveniently forget that. But Labour is already doing austerity. It looks like they're going to be doing some more. I think,
I just don't understand how when you look at the investment in public services, you would say that, when, as we've heard, you know,
because
George Osborne, when he was Chancellor,
you've hiked taxes by tens of billions of pounds in the last budget. You've been hiking taxes. Welfare is going to be cut further. Austerity is taking place. I think it would be much more prudent for the Labour Party to stop talking about austerity as if it's something that only the Tories can do, when the country is in a financially perilous position.
And that's why we're actually talking
difficult
about
decisions have to be made.
Not austerity.
But there are choices to be made. I mean, you're talking tax rises that have gone up, but certainly under the Conservatives, and they have also gone up to Labour. It's going to be spending cuts this time around because Rachel Reeves doesn't want to break her fiscal rules, and also because she doesn't want to borrow any more money. Is that the right political choice?
I mean, also look at what's happening to unprotected budgets. So there are many councils which are teetering on the edge of bankruptcy.
And they've had a real-time terms uplift under this government.
How are they going to make up the shortfall without more spending from central government?
Well, there has been more spending
The thing is, sorry, I listened to you very patiently.
Sorry, you're right.
The stuff about we're not the party of austerity is in rhetoric. When you look at the nitty-gritty, yes, there are areas where you're boosting spending, that's very welcome, but look at what's subject to fiscal rules and what isn't. When it comes to defence spending, it's a blank cheque. And now you might think that that's perfectly legitimate, that's fine. But when it comes to things like welfare, when it comes to things that people need in order to survive after having been punished, but with rounds and rounds of brutal austerity policy, then suddenly you've got to operate within the fiscal rules. It seems to be one rule for one set of spending priorities and another for another.
Well, I think if you look at my background is international development. That's what I've worked in for years. So there was a very tough decision last week on where we got the money for the defence spending.
And did you agree with it?
I think, as the Prime Minister himself says, it wasn't a decision he was happy to take. I would have,
From that sector, do you think it was the right decision to take money from international aid and put it into defence?
I think our international aid is also important in terms of, defence, diplomacy, development. They all go together. But I recognise it was a tough decision. But I guess my point is that we are already making these tough choices. National security it is obviously the number one priority as a government. If you can't keep your people safe, you can't do much else.
So get to waste and others are put under a microscope. I mean, when it comes to MOD spending, we spend more than France and we get less than them.
But do you think the welfare budget is too big? The bill at the moment is too big?
So the majority of that welfare budget is going on pensions. It's the fact that we have
Would you cut the triple lock?
No, I'm saying that we've got an ageing population.
You would?
Of course I would.
I think that...
And you would too?
I mean, gosh,
100%.
I think
it's so affordable.
I think the best way to do it, and I know you're going to disagree with me on this, we've been agreeing too much, it was dangerous, here it comes, is inheritance taxes. I think the minute you start, really means testing what gets to older people, inevitably some people are going to be left out of it. That's why I'm so against, the changes to winter fuel allowance, because you're going to leave some people out. If you want to take that money back after having spent it on people who may not have needed it because they were rich, is you take it back after they've passed away.
I think it's incredibly important if you are going to propose more money or say that budgets can't be cut, you have to say where you'd find the money. And this is inheritance tax adjacent. But the fact that, if you would be passing on a lot of inheritance, but you don't have to contribute it all to your social care, is a point that Theresa May tried to make and lost an election on. But there was a very important point to make there. The very, very tough decisions to be made about where this money comes from, it might involve tax hikes, it might involve spending cuts as well, in order for the government to do what it needs to do on the international stage. Right. But you can't pretend, and I don't think you are, you can't pretend it's not going to come from nowhere. My frustration is the idea that all of this is being done and nobody's really going to get hurt and there aren't going to be winners and losers in the tax or spending cut side of it. Austerity has been affecting the country for 15 years in different ways. Right. Labour are continuing it.
Before we move on, are you in favour of keeping the triple lock?
Yes, and that's been very clear from our government.
Yeah, but you're not.
No, it's
and nor are you, but you are.
I just think that you need to deal
All right.
with inheritance tax.
What isn't being offered that would probably make a huge amount of difference is any incentive for employers to take on workers who may require special adaptations in the workplace, which costs money, simply in order to function. Without that, well, the Resolution Foundation has already said only about 3% of the hundreds of thousands of people likely to lose benefit payments by being put on this harebrained scheme were likely to find a job. Unlike the DWP's announcement, this claim comes with a solid foundation of fact supporting it, because this is the 7th such scheme to be run by the department since 2010. The others were the Work Programme, 2011 to 2017. This included mandatory work-related activity for some disabled claimants, but was criticised for low success rates. The Health and Work Programme, 2017 to the present. This provides personalised support for disabled people, but lacks significant employer incentives. The Intensive Personalised Employment Support, IPES, 2019 to the present. This focuses on tailored support, but does not include direct employer incentives. The Restart Scheme, 2021 to present. This is aimed at the long-term unemployed, including some disabled people, with no direct employer incentives. Universal Credit Work Coaches, ongoing, expanded in 2020. This offers individual support, but without structured employer incentives. And the new Disability Employment Initiatives, that was 2023 to 24. This provided work coaches and assessments, but little in the way of direct financial incentives for employers. I already have a work coach, and I am about to join the Restart Scheme, literally this afternoon, Thursday, March the 6th, 2025. I'm having a telephone interview to get me started, as I understand it, on making Vox Political profitable again. I'll let you know how it works out. I will be on this scheme for at least a year because they have a duty to make sure that any remunerative work I get will last. But Labour's apparent belief that a rebranded version of a scheme that has been running in one form or another for at least the last 15 years is the very definition of madness. That's all I've got for you for now. Thank you very much for listening. Please like, comment and subscribe, and you will see me, hopefully, in the next one.